Hello, welcome to another episode of Cotton. And today I have a very special guest, and we are going to discuss this US Israel attack on Iran. And my guest today is Pravin Sawhney, and he is one of India's leading defense and security analyst. He himself was a former army officer, and as because he was an army officer, he brings in you see the practical experiences while analyzing defense and security issues. And he has authored a number of books on defense related issues, and he's also the editor of the magazine Force since 2003. So today we are going to discuss with him the ongoing crisis, which is a crisis, the US and Israel joint attack on Iran. So my first question is just to give our audience a little background and the context. So what is the broad background to the US Israel strikes on Iran? Is this accurately described as a joint preemptive operation, or has it become a wider multi party war involving proxies and regional escalation? How would you like to respond to this first question?
Right. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Now, if we just step back a bit, then this whole thing is really about Israel wanting a greater Israel. It is that Zionism at work. That is what they've been looking for. And America has been with them in this. In fact, it all started in 2003 with Iraq. And there is a four-star general of America, General Wesley Clark, who has said that there was a plan to uh, to get seven governments out in the Middle East in 5 years. So it started with Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and now Iran. Iran is important that Iran not be a stable country. For Israel, this is important because Iran is the only country that stands tall in the region. So, as far as America is concerned, America is basically fighting the Iran war in the Middle East. And how it started is that the Americans themselves are not clear. They were never clear. First, President Trump thought that he'll get a lot of military forces in the region, he'll be able to coerce Iran. So the problem here was that obviously President Trump and his key advisors simply have no idea about Iran, what Iran is, and they just thought it's like any other sheikdoms which are there, which are their vassal states in the Middle East, which is not the case with Iran. So he tried the coercion, that didn't work, and next is it slipped out from the interaction that Secretary of State Marco Rubio was doing, where he said that look, it was like this, that Israel had decided to do preemptive strikes on Iran, and we got to know of that. And because the Iranians have already said that if America comes to in the war, they will hit the American bases. So we wanted to preempt. So a case was being made which has not been accepted by the US Congress, by President Trump's MAGA base in India, in America. The case is that it was a preemptive strike. And the reason why the Americans made this case was because any war that America is to wage, it must have clearance from the US Congress. However, the president has broad powers under the American Constitution that he can wage a war if it is in self-defense. So when you say it's a preemptive strike, that means you actually did the action in self-defense. So that is the case they are making, which has not been accepted. And after that, there's total confusion. So it started with a coercion, then it became a preemptive war. Then President Trump says that this is about their nuclear weapons. Whereas if you recall that in June of 2000 last year, President Trump had clearly said in the 12-day war that look, we have destroyed all their nuclear weapons, Iran's nuclear weapons, and after that now he says it's about their ballistic missiles which can hit America. After that, now they are talking about that Iranian navy also has to be destroyed. So the point I'm making is that for America, this was a war of choice. When you do a war of choice, that means you must have a proper plan. In this case, no planning was done. And another evidence of no planning is that President Trump suddenly said, once the strikes were done, once the top leadership was taken out, the supreme leader was killed, he said after a day that, look, the Iranians want to talk to us and they want to negotiate. Whereas the Iranians came on television and said that, look, you started a war and we don't want to negotiate. There is nothing to negotiate because you have already crossed the red line. And the red line is you've killed our supreme leader. So what has happened after that, everybody is aware of that what the Iranians said that if America comes in the war, we will hit the American bases in the region. So they immediately made it a regional war. And because of the folly of the Americans by killing the supreme leader, what has happened is in the Middle East, it's no longer about Shias or Sunni, it is about Muslims. The entire Muslim Ummah, it is out on the streets. It is out on the streets around the world. We have seen their demonstrations in India also, in so many cities. So the point is a war of choice without planning, built on hubris, built on arrogance of power, has got into trouble. That is where it is.
The two things actually comes to my mind now. One is that when you were telling that, okay, 2003, but 2003, there was the issue was these weapons of mass destruction. That was the issue. And finally, everybody actually admitted, even the US and the UK admitted that there are no weapons of mass destruction. But then the Iraq of 2003 is not the Iran of 2026, isn't it? Because the Iraq's, whatever the internal condition of Iraq was in 2023, 2003, is not the internal conditions and conflicts of Iran in 2026. And
See,
another thing,
yeah,
whatever I have heard from you,
yeah,
it looks so messy. That means the from the American point of view, first you thought that okay, it is a war of choice, and then you actually you don't know the ground situation. You don't listen to your intelligence actually agencies. Now it looks quite, it's such a serious matter, but it looks quite funny. The premises of actually the whole thing.
yeah.
How do you
See,
respond?
yeah, see, you have made 2 points, and I want to respond to them. First is you have spoken about the Iraq War of 2003. Now, that and this has some major differences which must be understood. The first is that in 2003 it was a unipolar world. There was only America, only supreme power in the world, which is not the case today. Today the world is multipolar and there are three great powers. America is one of the great powers. The other two great powers are China and Russia. So that is a big difference. Second, in 2003, the Americans had overwhelming superiority in conventional capabilities over Iraq. Which is why, if you remember, that the Iraq War, which was called the Operation Desert Storm under General Schwarzkopf, that was shown live on television because that was their superiority that they wanted to display, which is not the case today. Today, nobody is, they are only, what we are getting is the information or the disinformation, the fog of war, which is coming out from the Western press, which is coming out from America. They are not showing the battlefield on television because now what has happened is that That was a war where they had overwhelming superiority, which is why they fought a campaign for 43 days. And what was left of the Republican Guards of Iraq was merely doing a 100 hours ground operation, which was basically a mopping up operation. Here today, the issue is that Iran, because of the support that it is getting from China and Russia, it is prepared to fight a 21st century war, which is very different from the capabilities that the Americans have, which is out of the 20th century war. Other point that I want to make is about the intelligence agencies. See, this is important to understand that intelligence agencies provide inputs for a war plan. The war plan cannot be based only on intelligence agencies. This is a folly that we also make in our country. We have made that in Jammu and Kashmir. Whenever intelligence agencies drive a war, it will always be a war gone totally wrong. So their inputs are important, but it is the military planners who have to plan a war, not the intelligence agencies.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So these so determining factors are not the intelligence, but the strategy planned by the military. Fine, very good. Now, actually, this the my next question is related to this in a way. So, in conflicts involving rapid arms escalation, questions of justice, legitimacy, and international law often arise. In this case, where do the parties, US, Israel, vis a vis Iran, stand in terms of justification for their actions?
See what America and Israel has done by their preemptive strikes. It is not under international law. There is no justification for the simple reason it does not have the United Nations clearance. Not only that, it does not have the clearance of their own Congress. This war. On top of that, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, in one of his briefings, he made it very clear that we do not believe in any rules of engagement. So, where is the question of international legitimacy? As far as the Israelis, see, I actually see this today as this war enters the seventh day, a war that is actually only between America and Iran. Israel has actually become a sideshow. What the Israelis are doing is they are a very small country, they are trying to defend themselves. No photographs, nothing is coming out from Israel about the destruction that has happened there. And all that they are doing right now on the ground is doing the action against the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And for that, they have called out their reserve forces. So, the report says something like 80,000 people have been called, and the people are not coming. The Israelis are not coming to fight in South Lebanon. So, the point is that Iran today is pitted against one of the three great powers. America is still a great power. It is a military power with an annual budget of $1 trillion. So the thing that Iran is doing in the Middle East, whenever this war gets over, will change the dynamics, the geopolitics of the region. That is what we are looking at.
It's a very interesting observation. The first thing you have made it very clear, distinctly clear. There's absolutely no justification on the part of US and Israel. So, and they are not following any international law, even not even internal their country's law, but so far US is concerned. So there is absolutely no justification, and they are not honoring the international law. And the second thing is that you have said that it's actually it is a war in a way. Even the Israelis also is become their sideline, and it is a war between America and Iran. and Iran is being supported by two major world power, China and Russia. So it's a very, very interesting actually equation. And we do not really know. My third question is these three countries. One is United States, Israel, Iran are militarily positioned for this war and their potential of win and defeat. That will go even little later. There's another question. We'll go in details in that question. But how? So for this war is concerned, how these three countries are positioned.
So you see, position is that as I said, that the key thing here is that America is fighting the Israeli war. It was to be a Israeli war. It is a Israeli war. So as far as America is concerned, that within President Trump's MAGA base, people are unhappy. The rating of the president is stands today at 21%. People do not want a war. They do not want a war that America should fight on behalf of Israel for Israel. So that is also down. The US Congress is divided. This is a war of choice for America, but America has no clear plan. It does not look like, and they are not in control of the plan at all. So the point to make is it is all ad hocism that is happening on the American side. And as far as Netanyahu is concerned, he is hoping that this war it emerge in a victory, a clear victory for America, which I do not see is possible at all. On the other side, Iran, if you see in an objective way, Iran made all the efforts were made from their side at negotiations that there should be diplomacy at work. And that diplomacy has not worked. In fact, this preemptive strike that happened at a time when Oman, as the mediator in Geneva, it was being reported that the talks are going well, the indirect talks, and they can announce a breakthrough, but the preemptive strike was done, and without realizing that as far as Iran is concerned, it had learned a lot of lessons from the 12-day war that happened in June 2025. And the key lessons that it had learned was that there should be decentralization of command. What basically that means is that when we are talking about a war of survival, it is not important to have unity of command, that you have a single boss. What is important is because for everybody it is a war of survival for all the Iranians. So even if one or two or three rugs are eliminated of leadership, the other people, they can always do the coordination. What is in military terms called the kill chain? The kill chain is retained. It does not destroy, because for each individual of the kill chain, it is a war of survival. And on top of that, they have been preparing for this war for the last at least 25 years. And certainly after this 12-day war of last year, they have started working very fast for this war because they knew it will can come any time. And a big evidence of that is that in early 2026, reports came that Iran was no longer using the American GPS satellite constellation system. Instead, it had switched on to the Chinese Beidou 3 constellation system satellites. What this means is that first of all, Beidou 3 is a new system satellite constellation, and it is superior from the GPS in many ways. But not to
Okay.
go in those details, the fact of the matter is that because of this support that they are getting from space, from the satellite system, the Iranians are getting, all their strikes are precision. They are not hitting the targets. And today the situation is that the American ports, American bases, American radars, American command and control system, everything has been hit very badly. And because of that, what has happened is that the Iranians are publicly saying that we have not closed the Strait of Hormuz, but the insurance companies are not willing to insure the containers. The insurance premium has gone up more than 600% because of the risk, because of the fear which has been created. And today, over 3,000 ships are waiting there, but they do not have the insurance. And then, even President Trump said that look, the American warships will provide them the escort, but nothing happened. So you can well imagine that the war is just in the early stages. For the Iranians, this is a war of survival. So Iran simply cannot lose this war. And for the Americans, the little that picture I have given to you, it becomes very clear that for them to win this war is not an easy task at all.
No, the thing is, so the Iranians actually, from last year's that 12-day war, so though the negotiation was going on in Geneva, you mean that Iranians were actually prepared for it, for any sudden attack on the part of US or Israel?
Yes, because what had happened was, if you recall, that even in the 12-day war that happened last year, they were in the talks, and once again the preemptive strike was done. They were cheated. So they learned all these lessons. So they understood that Israel is determined, and Israel has been determined for a very long time. Netanyahu, especially, has been determined to have this his dream of greater Israel. So Iranians are, as I said, a civilizational nation. They understand all this. So they are now supported by two great powers. Not only that, even North Korea, the leader John Un has very Kim Un has said very clearly that
Yes.
look, I am happy to give ballistic missiles to Iran if Iran will ask for it, and we should take him seriously. He is not joking.
So interesting developments. And another thing you mentioned that actually we don't see pictures, damaging pictures of actually inside Iran being affected in a massive scale. On the other hand, so all the American interest in the Middle East, they are being attacked. And so many hundreds of ships are not willing to cross even. So that's, I think, again a very interesting. So we don't see many pictures in the media and other places. We have not seen.
See, who will release the pictures? The Americans are not releasing the pictures. The Israelis are not releasing the picture. For them, it is a war of choice. They should actually be telling the world how much they are winning or how they are gaining victory every day. Something that they did during Operation Desert Storm, which was in 2003 against Iraq. Now the situation has changed. So there is problem. And
Now,
yeah,
yeah, from my understanding also, for the understanding of the audience, now this 12-day war, it was stopped. So who stopped it? And whose terms it was stopped
see,
last year?
that war was started by Israel. And Israel suddenly realized that it could not take on Iran. So they compelled the Americans to come in the game. And which is why on the 12th day, the American bombers came. It was all staged managed. And as far as the Iranians are concerned, they didn't want to continue the war at all. So everything was over in 12 days. But
Good.
in this war, how it is different from that 12-day is that this is one war right from day one. Americans are in the war, which was not the case with the 12-day. That was the Israelis who started the war. So
They
that means,
started it, yeah. They
yes,
started it. Americans joined later. And
yes,
then, yeah.
yeah. So
Now,
as far as America is concerned, America right from day one, when the preemptive strike happened, it took ownership of what is Israelis war.
Good. Now, my next question is, how do you expect the broader international community, including China, Russia, Europe, and the UN, to respond as the conflict evolves?
See, they already, everybody has made the position very clear. As far as Russians are concerned, President Putin has said, and their foreign minister Lavrov has said, that we will do everything to make this war impossible for the Americans and the Israelis to win. And they mean it. And there is plenty that they can do. And they are doing it. I mean, not to go in the details, their air defense system, layer defense system, they are all from Israel. From Russia. Then, on top of that, the Chinese have provided already their, as I said, the Beidou 3 satellite constellation. Then the Chinese also are helping by actually sending a lot of missiles, because reports had come Chinese have very big aircraft, the strategic aircraft which are called Y-20. Each aircraft can carry 66 tons of material. So something like 20 odd have already reached there. And nobody can shoot down a Chinese aircraft, rest be assured. So the point I'm making is that the Iranians have their own production capability, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has conceded recently. He has said the problem is that the uh, Iranians can make 100 missiles in a month, but we can only make 6 to 8 interceptor missiles in a month. You need the interceptor missiles to stop the missiles of the Iranians. And then the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, has also said in a briefing that we have ammunition shortages. Not in a briefing, this was a closed door briefing, which has leaked out in some way. So the point I'm making is this is a war for which President Trump was not prepared. And now President Trump is finding as to how to end the war. Sometimes they talk of ground forces getting in, then they start talking about involving the Kurds, that they can also do something. But this will all not help at all. And as
It
far
is.
as the other side is concerned, Iran has made it very clear we never started the war. If you stop the war, we will stop the war. Simple. So you see, they
The,
have made a very decent case, the Iranians, and the world is watching this, and it
the,
has
ball,
implications.
the ball is in your court. So you
Yeah.
started it.
So yeah. So
And
you
you
were,
have to stop it. And you
but
have to surrender. They are even saying that you have to surrender. We are
no,
not going to stop
they're
it.
not asking for surrender,
Huh.
because you see, the point is, if America stops the war, then as a bigger party, as a great power, Americans have lost it. Stopping a war will amount to lose it whichever way President Trump wants to do it, and that has serious implications in the Middle East,
Yeah. And
geopolitics.
yeah, actually, it is. You may not use the word surrender, but stopping the war is it amounts to that only, isn't
No,
it?
I won't use the word surrender. Surrender has
Huh.
an entirely different meaning.
Yeah,
But you see, then the Iranians they become victorious in this war.
it is. Yeah, good. Now, another thing comes now here. We are two Indians discussing this war on Iran. Now, so what is the case of India? What
See,
is the
India's case is very simple. India, all this while, until the war started, we made the case that look, we have a foreign policy which is strategic autonomy. Now, that facade of strategic autonomy, when all the while we aligned our military posture, we aligned our foreign policy, we aligned our technical policy, technology policy, which is the technology of the artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution, everything is aligned with America. So, that facade which was created by the Modi government, that has come apart. That has come apart in the sense that recently we heard, in fact, only yesterday, the US Commerce Secretary Scott Bensett, he has made a statement publicly that look, because of this war, we have allowed India that you can get oil for 30 days from Russia. Now, who are they to allow us? So, somebody has given them that power. We have to see that they can talk to us with hubris and arrogance. Who are they to tell us? I mean, we are a country of 1.4 billion people. We have talent and we have a status in the world, and they are treating us like a vassal state. Not only that, the US Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau, he is there in at the Rasiana dialogue, which is run by the External Affairs Ministry in Delhi. And in presence of the Prime Minister, yesterday he has said very clearly that look, our foreign policy is America first, and for us it is important that the trade deal which is going on between India and America, which he says is going on well, that this can be the beginning of unlocking of our relationship. So the point is that please recall that within weeks of President Trump's inauguration in office on the 13th of February 2025, Prime Minister Modi in the White House signed a joint statement where the key thing was Mission 500. What that means is that India has committed to have a bilateral trade with America for $500 billion by 2030. And today in 2026, the bilateral trade is a mere $140 billion. So, what Christopher was saying in Delhi is that you focus on the trade, we will give you no concessions, and we will make sure that what the mistake that we made with China, that China built up markets because of our concessions, we won't give you any concessions. Please tell me, what is this partnership about? What is this strategic autonomy we are talking about when the world is multipolar, when we have other options, when there are two other great powers? This year, India is to do the BRICS presidency. I cannot think as to what will be the shape of this presidency, how it will work out. Because then our Prime Minister goes within, I think, 36 hours or 40 hours before the war starts to Israel. There was no need to go there at all, because by going there we have actually shown our alignment with the Israelis. And Netanyahu was smart enough at the Knesset. First of all, he declared that India is a great power. He spoke about something called hexagon of alliances, which is a no non-starter. It will never happen. And then some medal was given for the first time. The medal was created, Medal of the Knesset, to the Indian Prime Minister. I mean, what is all this? Then they have already told us that look, the Chabahar port, in the Chabahar port, which is the Iranian port, which is part of our international north-south transport corridor, takes us to Russia and beyond. And we are looking at great opportunities to do trade with Russia. Chabahar Port 2024, the Modi government signed a 10-year contract for the first time for a terminal at the Chabahar Port, and India invested $300 billion there. Out of that $300 billion, $150 billion was for the equipment of the port, and the remaining was for the infrastructure of the port. And now the Americans have told us that, look, you cannot have trade with Iran at all. And we have accepted that. Why? Because this year's budget has made no provision for the Chabahar port. Instead, the Prime Minister, when he was there recently in Israel, he spoke with Netanyahu about the need to revive what is called the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, which goes through the Haifa port of Israel, which is a complete non starter. So, the point I'm making is that we are a nation which had a balanced foreign policy. and it is no longer balanced. It is just, it's come apart in the sense that the world can see, the global south can see. We want to have the leadership of global south. All the countries are watching this war. It is important for everybody in the world, and they are drawing their own lessons. And unfortunately, my country, the lessons they will draw of India are not the lessons which are favorable for the development of 1.4 billion people.
Two things here. I just want to make another two things. One is that so far this killing of Khomeini, Ayatollah Ali Khomeini is concerned. Even now, the Prime Minister has not said a word, no word. And the ship which came to join this naval exercise here in India, and that ship was destroyed by Americans. And there also, we have not said anything. We have not even condemned that.
So, you see, the point is, we can keep talking this. The point is that all this talk that Jay Shankar used to give at various forums, the external affairs minister, that the world seeks our advice. We are Vishwaguru, and we have a strategic autonomy. We have a neutral economy, autonomy in our foreign policy. We are a neutral nation. We balance our foreign policy, which is not true at all. And there's enough evidence of that. Enough evidence. We can keep talking about it. So I've just given you a couple of examples. There is another example of this unfortunate thing that has happened close to the Indian borders. So there are enough evidence of all this, not condemning or condoling the killing of the supreme leader of Iran. And we have seen how worldwide the impact of that has been. It is not about Shias or Sunnis, it is about the Muslims. And worldwide, we have seen how the Muslims have reacted. There are demonstrations. The sheikdoms and the kingdoms in Middle East, they are very worried because their own people are now up in arms against what the Americans have done and the Israelis have done. So, as far as India is concerned, I think India has taken sides, which is not good about the foreign policy. And let me say the last thing on this: foreign policy of a country, the only purpose of that is to make the life of its own people better. Nothing more than that. And today we have a great opportunity that the world is multipolar. We have options, we have talent, our own talent. We could have done a lot with the other countries. We are a founding member of BRICS. We have options. But what we have created is instability in our region. And on top of that, when the government says that we can do development amongst instability, it will never happen.
Now, I have only two questions left.
Okay.
One
Okay.
is that so where do you go from here? And you have said in one of your interviews, I have seen that this war, Iran is going to win this war. So, what are the broad premises on which you have, of course, already explained many in the process, but still, as a concluding things.
No, what are India's options? No, what's your question?
No, no. I said that you have already said that you are telling that this Iran is poised, positioned to win this war. You that is what you said in one of your interviews. I
Yeah,
hear.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So and
see, there are three things I want to say very clearly at the conclude as the concluding things. Iran cannot lose this war. Number one. Number two, I cannot see how America can win this war. And number three, as far as Middle East and the world is concerned, there will be a global geopolitical shakeup. And number four, if I may add, India is on the wrong side of global geopolitics. These are my concluding remarks.
great, great, great. Now last additional question.
Okay.
This is not directly related to this war, but generally. Now, how do you see this military industrial complex and the in the present world scenario?
How do I see the?
This military industrial complex.
See, now as far as military industrial complex is concerned, you see, it has to do a complete change. It has to shift from the requirements of the 20th century war to the requirements of the 21st century war. So that is a major shift. Now, what we are looking at in this war and other wars also is we are looking at perhaps drones of various types, and they should be produced at scale. Then we are looking at what I call the virtual domains of war: capabilities in space, capabilities in electromagnetic spectrum, capabilities in cyber. So these are the capabilities which will win you the war, and which is why I keep saying in all my videos for to the Indian military that you are preparing for the wrong war. Please learn and understand the PLA war, the People's Liberation Army war, the Chinese war. And the last thing that I want to tell you is something very interesting. The Chinese right now are having what is called the two sessions. Here, their 15th 5-year plan is being made. That means this plan is from 2026 to 2030. And one of the things that they have put there, that 10% of their GDP will go in research and development. And you understand what is their GDP? They are today a 20 trillion economy. So the amount of money that they are planning to put, and plenty of that will go to the PLA. And in any case, the modern technology that we are looking at of the 21st century war, the military industrial complex that we are talking about, it is all dual use. All the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution and for the war where we are headed, which is a war of autonomy, autonomous war, they can be interchanged. So the world has changed. India has to understand the world has changed. India has to understand the global geopolitics is changing very fast, and India has to understand that we need a drastic course correction in our foreign policy.
Is it happening? Do you see it happening?
No, no, I don't see this happening under the Modi government.
That's the sad part of it. I'm so grateful to you that in this 30 minutes, 30 or 35 minutes, you have almost explained everything. So for this war is concerned, and maybe whenever we get time you are available, and by the time it actually evolves, and we hope that this war should not prolong, because it's not only good only for Iran or Israel or America, it's for all of us. This world's war should come to an end. But if it goes on, then we'll have to, again, I might have to request you to
Sure,
enlighten us
sure.
about the unfolding of the situation. So, meanwhile, thank you very much for sparing your time for the audience of the Northeast now. Thank
Thank you
you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.